Welcome into another episode of Bully Ball on the Gold Standard Podcast Network. Brandon Aiyuk calls a meeting, a secret meeting. What does it mean, Steph? We'll be right back. I'm Jason Aponte. That's Steph Sanchez in her Dr. Evil lair, as you can see, stroking a kitty. Now, legend has it that Kendrick Lamar, definitely pause. Legend has it that Kendrick Lamar has played Not Like Us for a seventh time just now. Can you confirm with
Seventh at this
no,
point
no,
is probably
it
like
just happened.
7,000.
It just happened again. I mean, like he just he popped back out and was like, let's do it again. So yeah,
Run it back.
run it back one more time. Can you confirm with your sources?
Yeah, that definitely did happen.
Yeah.
And did
Okay.
Drake.
Yeah. So wow. Yeah, it was a crazy thing to watch like on Amazon, and it's so funny because like Jeff Bezos was like, yeah, we'll agree to the concert, and then like when he sees all the gang members on stage, he probably was like, wait a minute, what is this? Like
What do we agree to?
What do we agree to here? But rat beef aside, let's talk about 49ers beef because obviously there's always something. So yesterday on NFL Live, Ryan Clark of the Pivot Podcast, and Brandon Aiyuk's going to be on the Pivot Podcast, by the way, and that's going to be probably very, very interesting to watch. But Ryan Clark informed everybody that Brandon Aiyuk had called a meeting, which kind of lines up with the fact that, I hate the social media watching, but he was taking a jet to San Jose, right? Like, and that just honestly lines up with everything. But he calls a meeting, and obviously Adam Schefter talks about or Ryan Clark talked about how Brandon Aiyuk feels disrespected. I think we've kind of talked about that. Negotiations are going to get like that. You're always going to feel disrespected because you think you want something, that you're worth this. You think that, the team thinks you're worth this. And of course, there's going to be feelings. Everyone's human, right? And it happens with every single athlete, right? Like Michael Jordan almost didn't sign with the last time with the Bulls because he was going to sign with the Knicks because he felt disrespected. It happens. It's everybody. This isn't just the 49ers hate Brandon Aiyuk thing. But what I found was interesting a little bit, and I'll start with this, is the talk that Adam Peters made a call for Brandon Aiyuk, and they said, no, obviously they said nothing ever went anywhere, but it seems like the price that the 49ers want to trade him for isn't the price they want to pay him for. Meaning, hey, you want to trade for him? He's the number one wide receiver. Hey, Brandon Aiyuk, I don't think you're a number one wide receiver. That's the part that I find that's a little bit weird about this. It's like you're telling everyone that you want number one wide receiver stuff for him, like, a trade package. And then behind closed doors, you're telling him, well, your production kind of screams wide receiver too a little bit more. What do you think?
Well, I think that's definitely part of the reason that Brandon Aiyuk is probably like, hey, man, like, what the hell? I mean, because they're telling teams one thing, this is how we value Brandon Aiyuk. But on the other hand, they're telling Brandon Aiyuk, this is the number we value you at. And there's obviously some discrepancy there. I mean, again, this is just the thing with negotiations, right? I do feel like 49ers asking price for a trade was inflated as it is with like most players that they offer in a trade or that they're just simply listening. I don't think to be fair, like I don't think the 49ers were actively like seeking out a trade. And so that's the difference, right? If they were actively looking to trade him, I think they would have been fine with taking less. But because it's more so of a you're taking this luxury item, let's just say for just putting it in layman's terms, we're selling this item. If you're interested in it, you have to pay this premium price. Like I think that's more what it was for the 49ers than what they really value Brandon Aiyuk at. I think it's because they want to actually keep Brandon Aiyuk is why they set the price so high. And so I think that explains the discrepancy, but I would not be surprised if that was like the main reason why Brandon Aiyuk was feeling a way about how these negotiations have gone. And I'm glad, Jay, that you brought up the fact that what Ryan Clark was citing was the interview that Brandon Aiyuk had on the pivot, because I saw so many people, even though Ryan Clark said it clearly in ESPN, He said it clearly. Like, he mentioned Jaden Daniels walked in, and everyone was like, Jaden
What
Daniels
did
walked
Daniels
in for
doing?
the interview or to the meeting with the 49ers? What does this mean? No, like, do you guys
Yeah.
not like pay attention? Like, where's your
No,
comprehension? I saw
it's
so many people saying that it just drove me nuts. It's like Jaden Daniels was not at the meeting that the 49ers had with Brandon Aiyuk. So let's squash that right off the
that's
bat.
that's illegal, by the way, in the NFL. You are not allowed in another team's facility. And it just speaks to when you see something tweeted or you see the headline, headlines mean more than the actual story. No one reads the story, no one listens to the soundbite.
Yeah.
You read the headline. That's why, as a writer, right, headlines are so important because I have to draw you in. But when I write something and I put where the 49ers rank in a pre-camp post, a power ranking, no one's going to read. And they're going to be like, why would you write this? But you didn't read it. You didn't read it. You didn't listen. You just read that part. So there's a lot of hysterics going on right now with this. I will say this, and I want to ask you this. I think that if this meeting was not announced as a, secret meeting, right? Like a sit down. It felt like one of those scenes in the Godfather, like where the mafia they call the families together, right? Like they've got to have a sit down and squash the beef. If this was never announced and it was just something that they've normally done, which is go on secret meetings and all that stuff and do it, and we don't hear anything, I don't think that would mean anything because then we wouldn't know. I think it's a little bit more troublesome that it was announced that there's going to be this meeting, right? And now radio silence. That's a little
It's
bit.
all it hasn't even been a full day though, Jay. Like, what
I
do you
don't.
mean there's like
I don't know if it's worrisome. You know what I'm saying? I'm just saying, like, nobody knows what happened in this meeting, right? Like, nobody has any idea. And how how do you get to a point where it's just like it goes from we're announcing the meeting to it's already 2:26. We don't know anything. So I don't know. How did it go? Good, bad. I don't know. I will say this, per my sources, the 49ers and Brandon Aiyuk spoke about a contract. Boom. You're welcome. Anything can happen also.
yeah, that's some riveting stuff right there. But
Hey,
yeah,
you're
I mean,
welcome.
I know we're all waiting on like pins and needles right now, but you have to be real. Like, there's no way you were actually expecting any news about this meeting like immediately. Like, I would expect that within the next 2 weeks, the public will actually get some kind of more public resolution to all this, whether it's the 49ers have granted Brandon Aiyuk a trade request, hypothetically, right? I'm just saying. Or it could be the 49ers are nearing a deal with Brandon Aiyuk. It could be any one of those outcomes that I think like will actually uh, get more clarity on in the next couple of weeks. But I wasn't expecting to hear anything about it immediately, and I think that's the frustrating part of all this from us, just like watching all of this unfold. But I'll tell you what, Jay, I actually feel like, and maybe I'm just being an annoying optimist here. I actually think it was a good thing that this meeting took place just from the standpoint of it being more productive than what had been happening the last few weeks, which what I felt was speaking indirectly to each other through the media, through friends, talking to the media, beat writers, all this stuff. I think Brandon Ayuk coming to the table and being like, we got to figure this out right now, is getting an answer quicker. And maybe the outcome would have been the same than it would have been in a month. But at the very least, I think all sides and fans included, we're going to see a resolution to this, sooner than if the 49ers waited or Brandon Ayuk waited till like near the start of training camp. Because, damn well the 49ers would have been okay with milking this out till then. Right.
Mm.
Like, they have no urgency to make this happen. They probably want Brandon Ayuk to sweat a little bit. um so I think it was a good thing that Brandon Ayuk, is saying, yo, what do you want to actually do? Let's do it.
It's June 25th, 2:30 on the East Coast, and it's only one of three ways that this goes. Brandon Ayuk signs an extension. Brandon Ayuk gets traded. Brandon Ayuk plays on his fifth-year option. We don't know. No one knows anything what happened in that meeting. And nobody has any new information aside from the fact that we found out that Adam Peters called, right? That Adam Peters called and wanted to see what's up with him. I'm tired, Steph. I'm tired. Really tired, man. I got to say this. This one is dragging itself out much differently than the other extensions, right? Fred was quiet. George Kittle, we found out later on, he felt like he was lowballed and he felt disrespected, right? What did they call it? The St. Valentine's Day Massacre or whatever it was called, right? Like okay, we find all that later. I'm tired, man. I'm at a point where just do it, don't do it, whatever at this point, right? But let's just logically look at this, right? If the San Francisco 49ers are in a position where they have to push all the chips into the middle of the table for a Super Bowl, trading Brandon Aiyuk while you have leverage on him to play this season downgrades your offense, right? And I want to remind people that when you get draft picks for players, it doesn't always go your way. Sometimes when you're the Minnesota Vikings and you trade Stephon Diggs to Buffalo and then you hit on Justin Jefferson, you look good. Sometimes you trade A.J. Brown and you draft Treylon Burks. Sometimes you trade DeForest Buckner and you draft Javon Kinlaw. So I don't care about draft picks. You know why? They're only as good as the player you draft. And this idea that Brandon Aiyuk can be easily replaced, while we're all high on Ricky Pearsall, while we're all happy with Jacob Cowing, they haven't taken a snap yet. I just don't understand the rush to. So the San Francisco 49ers, when Jimmy Garoppolo was here, right, and they were getting ready for Trey Lance, and they had Brock Purdy on the roster, right? We were at that training camp, right, Steph? The 49ers are waiting for someone to give them what they want for Jimmy Garoppolo. And they're not going to budge. They're not going to give away Jimmy Garoppolo. You know why? You just don't give away good players. You don't give away good players. So what do? They let them run around in training camp, do wind sprints behind them, make a whole circus of it because they're stubborn. So now you mean to tell me it's getting to a point now where the 49ers are on the doorstep of possibly winning a Super Bowl. Now, it's gotten so far that we have to get Brandon Aiyuk out of this building and we'll just take anything for him. Nonsense. Absolute nonsense. No chance that I see any of that happening. It would have to be that Brandon Aiyuk does something completely out of his character or something that you just can't have that guy in the building anymore for, but it wouldn't be because of a trade request. You can request a trade all you want. I don't have to honor it.
Yeah.
And that's the hard part about all this is the pattern of everything that the Niners have done. Now, all of a sudden, this one, while they actually had the leverage and they didn't have it on Deebo, right, because there was no fifth-year option. Now, this is the one where it's just like, we've got to get rid of Brandon Aiyuk now because it's too far gone. What? When? How? I don't think so.
The 49ers have little incentive to trade Brandon Aiyuk at this point. I think the only time it would have made sense was for the draft, and even then, to your point, Jay, like, I mean, that's a crapshoot.
Yeah.
You're not guaranteed an impact player at the the draft picks that you get in return for him, which is another reason why I think the price that they set for trades is so high too. Because like, okay, the higher the pick, usually the higher chance it will be an impact player. So the 49ers probably wanted to guarantee that as best they could. But there is, at this point, no incentive to them honoring a trade request. I think the only way that they would honor it is out of respect to Brandon Aiyuk, if they really did feel like it got to that point where you can't repair this relationship. But I just don't see that happening. And again, like, I feel like the fact that Brandon Aiyuk called this meeting is a good thing, in the sense that Brandon Aiyuk could have very well decided to never talk to the 49ers again and through his agent, like, requested a trade, right? Instead, like, calling this meeting tells me he's trying to figure something out here. But yeah, as far as 2024, and as we've mentioned several times, this year being, this last window that you have with this core, trading away Brandon Aiyuk makes zero sense for the 49ers. unless maybe it's a player for player trade, which is extremely rare. I know people bring that up all the time as a possibility, but that is so rare. And it's usually because two teams usually can't come to an agreement on like equal value of two players or however many players in a package for a player. So yeah, I don't see it happening. It could be something that Brandon Ayuk threatens, but again, the 49ers don't have to honor it. Just goes back to the fact that the 49ers have the leverage here in this situation. I think the only leverage that Brandon Ayuk had here is getting a quicker resolution or requesting a quicker resolution than waiting all the way down to around the start of training camp. So just having an answer of what's going to happen a month before. But ultimately, I think whatever was going to happen then, it is going to happen now. I don't know what that's going to be, but if I had a bet, I would still be betting that Brandon Ayuk is a 49er in 2024. Why? Because currently that's his contract.
A draft pick could be a draft pick, but it could be a 1,300-yard receiver. You know how we've always wanted
I
one of
was
those,
I was
Steph.
waiting for you to make this reference, by the way.
I
Could be a
just trade
boat.
it for it could be a boat. You know, it could be a 1,300-yard receiver. You know how we've always wanted one of those. I'll never understand this infatuation with draft picks. I really won't. I'll never get it. The highest bust rate of any position in the NFL draft in the first round is wide receiver by a wide margin. Meaning not signing a second contract with the team. 27% of first rounders sign a second contract with their team. Sure, let's take those odds. Let's just go ahead and do that and see if we can just find another Brandon Aiyuk in the draft. It's nonsense. It's just nonsense. Dazzler says if we do trade BA, are we really that confident that a rookie Pearsall can replace BA's overall output in a Super Bowl or bust season? No, he can't. Ricky Pearsall's not going to have 1,300 yards. Ricky Pearsall's not going to get open every single time that you need him to. Ricky Pearsall's not going to have the efficient season that Brandon Aiyuk is. It took Brandon Aiyuk 4 years to do that. It's nonsense for anybody to believe that. It's unfair expectations to put on Ricky Pearsall to believe that because it's not fair. There are receivers in this league that have played years that haven't been able to do what Brandon Aiyuk just did with on the 32nd most targets in the league, 77 catches. He could never. Ricky Pearsall could never. That doesn't mean he's not going to be a good receiver, but absolutely not. Absolutely not. He needs to show that he can get open on the outside, man to man. Right now, I don't know what that is because we haven't seen him. But if you're talking about betting on something, Brandon Ayuk's rookie year, I believe. How many catches did Brandon Ayuk have in his rookie year, Rob? If you could look that up. In 2020. You mean to tell me that you think that he's going to be more polished and ready to go right off the rep like that in an offense like this? No, I don't. I've never. No chance. You
And
can't take that chance.
yeah, exactly. Like that's a huge risk. Even even more so right now in June when you haven't even seen him in pads yet. So like again, for all these people who are like, we can get rid of Brendan Ayuk because Ricky Pearsall has looked great through all these reports. I believe that he's looked great. Like I do believe that. But that doesn't mean the 49ers should make some, decision on Brandon Ayuk based on Ricky Pearsall looking great catching against air without any pads. I just want to remind people, I feel like people forget that at one point Dante Pettis has looked like an awesome receiver, like really promising
Don't say his
for
name.
for the 49ers.
Don't say
I
his
am
name.
not comparing Dante Pettis to Ricky Pearsall, but I am just outlining or highlighting the risk of putting all your eggs in a certain basket when you don't have that large of a sample size to make an informed decision. So I don't think the 49ers would go as far as to make a decision on Brandon Ayuk based on Ricky Pearsall. They might say like, "Hey, like we drafted two receivers, so this is why you have less value." Sure, because like I feel like all those things matter in negotiations, and you'll bring up any little thing to justify the price that you're offering. But realistically, I don't think they would go that far.
And that's the thing, right? And I've kind of made I've made I guess it's like the parallel between anybody who goes to their office and they ask their boss for, a raise. And your boss says, "We value you. We love you here. You lead all the meetings, you do everything right, but you were late this day. But you called out
Yeah.
this day. But you had a little bit of an issue where you turned in that one report like a few hours late." So in this negotiation, Brendan Ayuk says, "Hey, I've done everything that you want from me. I climbed out of the doghouse. I block. I run excellent routes." And they say, "Yeah, we love that, Brandon. We drafted you too. We love you. We want you to be here. But 77 catches, that ranks here in the league. Overall, this is all like the problem is, and the frustrating part for Brandon Ayuk, and I 100% side with him on this. They're using his production in a negotiation against him, but who's the team responsible for his production? It's you guys that don't throw the ball a lot. Obviously, it's just the way the offense doesn't work. That is limiting the way he is in terms of production. And then you're throwing it back in his face like, well, I don't know if we can give you $30 million for 77 catches or this many catches over your entire time. That's the hard part of negotiations. Both sides feel they're right. Both sides are doing what they think is best, and negotiations suck. And it just so happens that this one's playing out a little bit more, right? Every single star athlete, anybody who is going into a negotiation, there it gets contentious. It's never just walk in handshake. Never. Unless, unless it's Justin Jefferson, where you're going to get the most because you've done things that nobody's ever done in this league, right? I think that's a little bit closer to just being done, like right away, like closer to that. But for the most part, like I said, Michael Jordan walked in, he was about to walk out on the Bulls. And then he wanted to sign with the Knicks, and the Bulls came back and they got it done. That's negotiations. It gets sticky, right? Derek Jeter once talked about him saying, "I couldn't believe what I gave to this organization." And they looked at me and said, "I don't know if we can pay you all that or whatever." And he was still such a productive player. We're talking about some of the like Hall of Fame players. Like, I can't imagine what goes on in other negotiations, right? So I think that's just the nature of the business, is the negotiation part. I think this time it's just playing out a little bit more in public than we're used to. But I think this happens all the time. And I think that's what's really frustrating to Brandon Ayuk, is that they're kind of using his production against him. Well, throw him the ball a little bit more. But then if you do, then you've got to pay him the going rate for a guy who catches the ball 90, 100 times, right? It's hard. It's a lot of tough discussions.
I actually feel like Brandon Ayuk's numbers from last year were more impressive because of the context of him not being the number one
Oh
option,
yeah.
the context of the 49ers not being this pass heavy team and him having 1,300 plus yards. Like, that to me made it more impressive that every catch he did get was more productive and more efficient than a lot of other wide receivers. And so I think that's probably at some point the point that Brandon Ayuk and his representation have been trying to make this whole time too. Is like, if I get fed, I'm gonna eat. You know what I mean? So yeah, but I get it. I feel like, yeah, negotiations are always uncomfortable. They're always going to be contentious. I think it was Rob D, like in another show. I don't know if it was on Bully Ball or on 49K, but he commented, in a good negotiation, both sides feel like they lost something,
Mm.
and like that's the
That's a
truth.
that's a bar.
That's a bar, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's the truth. So, yeah, I mean, I think obviously we're at this point where the 49ers like are standing pat and not trying to lose anything.
Mm.
But I think if they truly want Brandon Ayuk, there's going to have to be some wiggle room, and if not, then just say that and, let him go. Cuz like, if you're not willing to meet that number, what are we even doing here?
Right. So there was a CBS analyst who floated out a trade idea, and the buzz is all Washington, obviously, because
Yeah.
Brandon Ayuk
It
is
used to be Steelers.
right,
The Steeler fans made
right,
it so.
right.
Didn't make
So
sense.
the the buzz is all Washington. So Jaden Daniels and Brandon Aiyuk, ASU teammates, right? Like for a little bit, they're good friends. They've been hanging out. TikTok video, but the CBS analyst throws out a deal which would involve Brandon Aiyuk going to Washington for Terry McLaurin. And I've got to say, Steph, while I know that'll never happen, it will rewrite the wrong of drafting Jalen Hurd, and you could have had Deebo and McLaurin together at the same time, and it'll be like one of those like fixing the timeline moments, like fixing the timeline, like you fixed it, right? Like you drafted Terry McLaurin, you never drafted Jalen Hurd. He was right there in front of you at the Senior Bowl. As a Terry McLaurin fan, that would really, really be kind of cool, even if it's never gonna happen.
I know you've been a huge McLaurin fan, and for good reason. I mean, he's a really talented receiver. But yeah, I mean, obviously that's just so tough. Like, would you include like extra picks with that? And
So
like,
do the 49ers acquire another pick with McLaurin? I'm not certain what the parameters were. Once I saw Terry for Aiyuk,
right.
I like my eyes like I went like blind to the rest of it. But the thing is Terry's under a deal already. Like he's signed.
True.
So does Washington give you picks to be afforded to sign Brandon Aiyuk to that extension that he wants of $30 million? Like I know it's like that's the hard part. But hey, man. That would just rewrite the wrongs, man. Just getting Terry McLaurin, but I would just be so happy, man. But obviously, just when I see that name in there, I'm just like, wow. I'm like the universe is like talking to me, man. But again, the universe is telling me that my favorite players are never going to play for the San Francisco 49ers. Like my favorite NFL players, like the last time my favorite NFL player was a Niner was Terrell Owens. After that, like I can't get my favorite players on.
You don't have a favorite player on the 49ers?
I have a favorite 49er. That's not my favorite NFL player.
Dang.
Yeah. Sorry, guys.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Duh.
Sorry.
Yeah, I'm McCaffrey. I mean, that's a pretty good one.
Yeah, that's fine, but he's not my favorite. He's not my favorite. He's not even my favorite Niner.
That's fair. Breaking news, Jason hates the 49ers.
Fred Warner's my favorite Niner, but he's not anywhere near close to being my favorite NFL player. Like, not even close.
That's fair.
Yeah, like Justin Jefferson's my favorite NFL player. Like Julio Jones had been my favorite NFL player.
How many favorites do you have, dude?
A bunch, man. I love wide receivers. I like Terry McLaurin far more than I like a 49er.
Damn.
Hey, man, whatever. Hey, we're just being honest. It's not a wild take.
The 49ers is going to find this clip and they're going to be like, see
what?
This is what we're talking about. This is why we don't want to pay you, Aiyuk.
Oh, because of me? Yeah, right. Yeah, this podcaster who sits in front of a bunch of pop figures is exactly why. Jeez, man. I'll be like, yo, that's just bad business, man. Look, I got a favorite 49er player, but they're like my favorite 49er hasn't been my favorite NFL player since Terrell Owens. Just hasn't been.
That's fine. I mean, so who's your favorite Niner?
Right now? Fred Warner.
Yeah.
Fred Warner.
Yeah. That's a good one.
Yeah. Is it?
Why not?
I don't know. Hey, all right. Are we gonna keep talking about this? Is there anything more that we can say?
I hope
all right,
not.
so here it is. All right. Well, here it is. So let's just say Brandon Aiyuk wants 30. The Niners say 26. What's the meat in the middle? What's the sweet spot?
It's got to be like 28 mathematically, and I think like also literally, because I feel like he at least wants and deserves more than Jalen Waddle at this point, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think 28 is fair.
And see, that's fair. But here's the thing, right? This is the problem. Jalen Waddle's a 2, right? That's what they're trying to hit with Aiyuk, even though him and Waddle's numbers are basically identical and usage. But Aiyuk's not a 2. He's not a 2. Right? Like he's the separator on this team. He is the guy who can get open by himself. Like, yes, scheme helps, and a lot of it does. Trust me, man. Like it's very easy to point out on film, like this route opens this up for him 100%. But BA's not a 2.
So therein lies the problem, right?
Right. That's the disconnect.
That's why BA wants more. But just the way that who was it? TJ Husmanzada was like, if Brandon Aiyuk got offered like the Amon-Ra deal right now, he'd sign that. That was like 30 million per year, right?
Mhm.
So if that's what he's been asking for this whole time, you don't think Brandon Aiyuk should like? I know we're always for players getting what they ask for,
Always.
and we'll always be for that. But like in terms of just like negotiation, the business aspect of all of this, you don't think the 49ers would be unreasonable to ask, hey, like Brandon, why don't you bring your asking price a little bit down closer to the 28? A lot of people were saying 28.5. You can prices right it and just get that little extra to make it better. But yeah, like do you think that it would be fair for the 49ers to then say like, okay, not 30 but a little bit less? Cuz that's what happens in negotiations is right? It's like meeting at that middle, someone has to budge at some point.
Well, that's the thing, right? And again, it's how dug in are you, right? Because I think Jalen Waddle knows he's the number 2 on his team. Tyreek Hill. I don't know if Brandon Ayuk believes that. And he shouldn't. I don't think he should. So it's interesting when it comes to this because that is somebody who has a production scale that matches yours. And Amon-Ra's the number 1 in Detroit, right? Like he gets thrown the ball a lot. So that's the disconnect, right? They want, if you're going to trade for Brandon Ayuk, we want you to trade for a number 1 wide receiver. But Brandon Ayuk, behind closed doors, we're telling you you're not a number 1 wide receiver and we can't pay you as such.
But that's the thing too. It's not just about being the number 1 wide receiver, I think in this case. I think it's also the fact that for the 49ers, like he's not, yes, he's the number 1 wide receiver, but he's not the number 1 option on this team. Whereas
Right.
number 1 wide receivers on some of these other teams that we're talking about here, they're the number 1 option on their respective team.
Yeah. Yeah, like Christian McCaffrey caught 84 passes. That's not
That's
that's
insane.
not that's not normal.
He's the
Right?
number 1 wide receiver
Right. Like
by those
Christian
metrics.
McCaffrey had 84 receptions, like back-to-back years. Like
Yeah.
and again, that's the frustrating part I think for Brandon Ayuk when he brings up his production is because it's not that they don't want to throw you the ball. McCaffrey, Kittle, Deebo, you and we run the ball and we throw the ball least amount than anybody. So when you add all that up, you get somebody who believes that they are not being able to show everything that they can do, even though he had a phenomenal year, one of the most efficient years we've ever seen. But the context of it is the 49ers just flat out don't throw the football as much as other teams, and they've got a lot of mouths to feed. Like, it's not even like it's 50 catches. Like, let's just say we took 30 off of McCaffrey's plate. Then you can spread those 30 around to 3 other guys. It's still only 10 more. I mean, Juwan Jennings just got signed. He had like 26 catches last season, right? Like it's just it's so hard to. It must be so frustrating for Aiyuk because he knows how good this team is and he knows that everybody needs to touch the ball, and I think that's what makes this offense so hard to stop. But when you have a running back catching the ball 84 times, it's really hard to distribute the football and get it to him. Like, you can't just force feed him.
And a lot of people are pointing out the obvious, which we've been talking about this whole time, that Brandon Aiyuk getting his deal means that Deebo Samuel most likely gone after 2024.
And I think
That
that's what they
also
thought as well too. I think that's what they thought as well too. I think they believe that. But then things are starting to change. So does that change, right? Like, I don't know.
but that also means that if that happens, Brandon Aiyuk is suddenly probably going to be getting more targets too,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
And maybe Brandon Aiyuk feels like, well, if I'm going to then be higher in the pecking order of, ball distribution, then I should get paid more. But like I don't obviously teams 49ers like don't pay guys for what they think they're going to be.
Uh-huh.
They don't pay guys based on a projection.
Mhm.
They pay guys based on past production. So,
And right, like let's compare, and I see Thomas's point. This is where I'm going with this. Let's compare Deebo's year in which he completely carried the 49ers and Brandon Aiyuk's season last year.
Yeah.
I think I know which one was more dominant.
Yeah.
I
That's
don't
an
think
easy one.
it's not a debate. It's
Yeah.
not a debate. Like Deebo Samuel had this entire team in his backpack. The entire team. Everyone. Everyone. Literally the Green Bay game when he's hurting his leg, he's running on 3rd and 9, right? The 49ers can't do anything. You know, their quarterback's a bit limited in these games. Deebo had a case right off the
Mhm.
bat to say, I want this amount of money. I want this amount of money because of what I've done. Ayuk, unfortunately, Ayuk, unfortunately, yeah, 2021. Ayuk, unfortunately, doesn't have that same claim, even though he had a phenomenal season last year.
And think about that. Deebo had a case, had coming off an incredible season, and yet we know what he got as well. So we know even that wasn't easy. So you got to imagine the type of things going on with this one when, clearly it's not the same level of production from Brandon Aiyuk that we saw in Deebo that year, right? So I just know things are getting nasty in
Oh yeah,
in some of these talks.
yeah. And the other thing is too, it's like, okay, back to the Brandon Ayuk thing, like, you want to go play with your buddy Jaden Daniels. Yeah, that's all well and good. But Brock Purdy kind of elevated you a little bit as well too last year. Like Brock Purdy was getting you the ball in ways that you've never gotten it, right? Like don't the grass isn't always greener.
Yeah, yep, that's what I was saying. Like, but that's how players think. Is
Hmm.
always like, this guy could get me more targets. I could be the number one on this team, and then you don't think about all those other aspects. Coaching, you know, the team you're surrounded by, the quarterback that's throwing to you. Like, I think, but sometimes players think like sort of short-sighted in that sense, and not seeing like the full picture. Obviously, like I think Brandon Ayuk has the best case scenario here with San Francisco in comparison to the Commanders,
Hmm.
um, just in terms of offense, coaching,
Hmm.
a multitude of things. Could he be a number one somewhere else and get like the crazy production somewhere else that he thinks he could get?
Hmm.
Yeah, he probably could, but you got to factor in a lot more than just that, I think.
So obviously, Washington's in a different situation because Brandon Ayuk knows Adam Peters. I'm sure Adam Peters loves Brandon Ayuk,
Yeah.
and his buddy Jaden Daniels is there. But Rob makes such a good point in our private chat. When has anybody ever said, "You know what's going to solve my problems? Let's go to Washington." Washington is exactly where I'm going to go. What a well-run organization, man. They really, really know how to get careers back on track. That's
But
such a good point.
to me, that tells you the changing of the tide for Washington, because I
Right.
think people are seeing it's
Peters
yeah,
and
yeah,
that
like,
draft. Peters, that
because
draft, 100%.
that's how it was for the 49ers, like, in the brick by brick years,
Wait, it's
people
not
were
brick by brick
joining
anymore?
because it felt promising.
It's not brick by brick anymore? Or did we get rid of all the mantras?
I It's gonna be brick by brick again, like in
No.
2025.
No. No more brick by brick. No more quest for six. No more nothing. No more revenge sword. None of it. Stop it. We're going to knock it all off. But I thought that was funny because Rob's right about that. But yeah, absolutely. Things have changed, right? Adam Peters is there to change things, right? All of those, all of those draft picks that they got, they really had a great draft. And then his buddy is there as well, too. But yeah, man. Anything else, Steph? I feel like, we could pull up a article about like quarterback play, but I don't think anybody really cares about like that stuff right now because of all this stuff that's going on right now. And you know what's
Yeah.
funny is as soon as we turn this off and we're done and we get out, there's definitely going to be something on NFL Live at like 4 o'clock about like how this meeting went, and it's gonna have to like be like run right back for an emergency podcast. So yeah, you made a really good point about like why we haven't heard anything from this thing is that the insiders are waiting to break it probably at 4, like when Adam Schefter goes on NFL Live and everything, right?
You think we'll get something that soon?
I don't know. I mean, Adam Schefter's a TV star now, so he needs to like
He's
be
he's
the one.
gonna he's gonna say something like without saying anything at all. That's what I'm
Oh wait,
predicting.
you mean
Big
I
word
was
word salad. Big word
I
salad.
I was told The meeting happened. I cannot confirm or deny whether it went well, but anything can happen.
That's the reporting we're gonna
I'm,
get
I'm,
today at
yo,
4.
can I ask you a question? What's the bigger beef? Schefter and Rappaport or Woj and Shams?
I think it's Woj and Shams.
I think so too.
For
I don't know
sure.
how that happened. I mean, obviously this isn't a basketball podcast, but yeah, I don't get like where that rivalry comes from.
It's the Kendrick and Drake, man. When you're like the two best in the game, it's like someone has to get turned down a notch.
Yeah. Yo, I think Woj and Shams should fight it out, man. Oh, I'm not reading that one. I'm staying out of it. Grass my guy, man. I'm staying out of it, bro. I'm not in it. All right.
As this conversation is happening, Not Like Us just played another time. Kendrick just played it again.
Oh, sources just say that Not Like Us was played one more time. All right. That's it. The show jumped the shark. Thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure you guys subscribe to the Gold Standard Podcast Network wherever you get your podcast. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, subscribe to Steph's YouTube channel, Steph49K. Maybe subscribe to mine as well too. No,
you
can't. No, I said no.
The hair tutorial coming out later today.
Oh man, I was gonna ask you like what you've been doing like when it comes to like the off-season stuff. So you're doing the hair tutorials.
Hey man, the sparkling water rating. Like I've been more busy. Like I gave myself more work. I'm an idiot during this this slow period than when there is stuff going on. So that's on me. But yeah, hair tutorial coming out later today. Check that out. Steph49K.
Hey, I ain't gonna hold you. I've been in my movie bag. Like, I really want to do like a movie review like channel. I've watched like 6 new horror films, and they've all been very good like lately. So that's what I've been doing to keep myself. And touching a little grass. The blades of grass are sharp. I don't know why people are always telling you to touch grass. It's kind of sharp. Gotta watch out. All right.
And like when you're a kid and it makes you itchy.
Yeah.
That kind. Yeah.
Touching grass is kind of dangerous sometimes. Anyway, this show is completely off the rails. Thank you guys for tuning in again. Subscribe to the Gold Standard Podcast Network wherever you get your podcast. Follow Steph on Twitter at Steph49K. Follow me on Twitter at JasonAponte2103. Check out both of our YouTube channels as well, too. I'll be back a little bit later with something else. But for Steph, for Jay, we're out of here.
Peace.